Okay, we're talking rooftop tents today. There are 3 major styles that are out there right now, plus about 2 hybrid styles. We're going to cover the pros and cons of each one of those groups in a decent amount of detail. I'm going to put chapters down below, so if I'm covering a category that you know already that you don't want, you'll be able to skip ahead to the next category. Rooftop tents are one of the more expensive things that you can get in overlanding. Most of them are on back order right now, so it's going to take you a while to get it. And then if you do get the wrong one, they are very, very hard to return because they're usually shipped to you via freight. Most of the tent reviews out there right now just cover one style, and a lot of times it's just one person that's owned one tent telling you how that tent is. We've actually owned all the different styles. We've used them for a decent amount of time. Let's jump into the tents. Okay, so the first category of tents that we have up is the soft top tents. You see these everywhere. They're the most common ones out there. They're made by companies like Tepui, Smittybilt, Tough Stuff, and Yakima. There's a bunch of other ones out there as well. The pros on this style of tent is they are the most affordable, and I think that's why you actually see so many of them out there. They start in about the $700 range, and you see them go $1,400 plus from there. They are lightweight, because they don't have the hard shell and all that other weight on them. So they're pretty light, so they can go on a lot of vehicles. Footprint wise, there's a lot of options. They have ones that have a really small footprint, probably the smallest style, as well as they can also be very roomy. You can go all the way up to like a 2 to 4 person tent, and that will have a little bit bigger footprint, obviously. When you start jumping into some of the negatives on this style of tent, they are the slowest tent to put up and take down out of all the categories, and it's not by a little bit, it's kind of by a lot. To just open the tent up and be able to climb in and go to sleep, yeah, you're probably only talking about 5 minutes, right? To put it away though is a good 2 to 3 times as long, because there's a lot more work to tuck and then put that cover that goes over the top back on correctly. Another thing about you have to put that soft cover on. Some of those soft covers have zippers all the way around the outside, and that can be a little annoying to get going, but that's far better than the ones that have Velcro all the way around the outside. The Velcro models, it can get really hard to get those things lined up and not have wrinkles, and then when they do end up with the wrinkles, you end up with wind going up in there and it balloons up like a marshmallow on top of your car. So yeah, needless to say, these are also about the worst style for miles per gallon. They're going to give you the most drag. It's just a big square up on top of your vehicle. Another problem with these is when they do open up, they have a tendency to be loud, and what I mean by that is if there's any type of wind or inclement weather. If also in snow, they build up snow on top of them in a way that's not good, and you're going to have to constantly kick it off. But the wind is a big deal. If you're a light sleeper and you try to sleep in the wind in these, they just flap around constantly because the sides aren't really pulled tight. So that's a few issues. We have had problems with these with durability. I've seen it to where they, if you drive on a lot of washboard, they will actually kind of jiggle apart, and we've had to where you open it up and like the bolts and stuff just kind of fall out, and we've had to put it back together. And that was even with some of the more common brands that everyone says are the good ones and the expensive ones. Like we had that problem with a Tepui tent down in Baja where it just jiggled apart every time we went on the washboard too much. The other thing that's really weird about these, and it's not really due to any of the manufacturers, it just has to do with the fact that they're made in China and get shipped all the way here. We seem to see a lot of cases of these having shipping damage. Me personally, the first one that I bought came with 2 holes stabbed in it from a forklift on the bottom. It didn't really affect the performance of the tent because that was a part that faced down, so moisture really didn't get up in there. I just stuck some Gorilla Tape on it, but it's still a little annoying to spend, you know, $1,200 on a tent and have holes in it day one. But I also had 2 other friends that had problems with these showing up damage. So it just seems to be kind of common with this style of tent. The other thing I would say is you've heard of these annex rooms that maybe you have, that can attach to the bottom of these fold-out soft tops and kind of give you a whole nother room on the ground on the side of your tent. Your car ends up looking like a apartment. The deal with the annex rooms, one is those take an incredible amount of time to set up. So even more time than the tent. And then the other thing about those is they usually have to slide into a rail on the bottom of the tent. So a lot of times what you end up having to do is you have to mount your tent off center on your roof to overhang a side of it off the edge to be able to put that annex on. And you don't really know that until probably the first time you go out. And then once you start mounting the tent off center, it looks goofy and kind of puts the weight of your vehicle off kilter. So it's a little bit of an annoying thing with the annex rooms that you should think through on how you're going to set that up and where you're going to mount it. Last thing on these tents is, that is the last thing. Let's go to the next one. Okay, next style of tents we're going to talk about is the pop-up tent. Pop-ups, you see popular brands out there with Roof Nest, CVT, James Barud, something. You guys probably know how to say it better than me. Anyhow, the pros on this style of tent is they are definitely faster to set up. So you're talking about literally 30 seconds to a minute usually to have them pop up, because they usually have some kind of spring or mechanism that pops them up. And then really only about 2 to 5 minutes to put away. So they're pretty fast set up and tear down. So as far as convenience factor, these rate pretty high. And where this category I think actually wins first place is storage. When we had this style of tents, you could actually put your pillows, your blankets, and your sleeping bags, and you could leave it inside the tent and even store the ladder in there, and you could still close the tent. As far as weather durability, we talked about that with the soft tops, how they were flapping around. With these ones kind of being either spring or gas struts or something that stretch it out, you don't have the fabric flapping around on these nearly as bad. So these are a lot quieter tents during storms, and then you have that hard shell on top that seems to be able to shed rain and water and even snow and even support a certain amount of collection of snow on the top. So these guys handle inclement weather pretty well. Another thing obviously is they do have a hard shell on top of them. So the miles per gallon on these tends to go up, and you tend to do a little better than the soft tops. The bad news on these is a couple things. Vertical room is one. I'm 6'4", and for most of these models, I can't actually sit up in them all the way straight. So it is always a little hunched over, and when you're trying to get dressed in the morning, especially if it's cold and you're trying to put a sweater on, it's interesting. It's like a contortionist act, and I'm not very flexible, so it's a pretty sad story actually. But anyhow, moving along from that, hardware that makes it pop up and down is inside of the fabric of the tent. And what happens is as it goes up and down, however that retracts, it folds in and out, it tends to rub against the side of the tent. And I have seen with these ones, we had one that we used about, I don't know, probably maybe 40 nights in 1 year. And we actually rubbed holes through the side of the tent where it rubbed on the metal when you closed it and opened it and closed it and opened it. One other thing on the hardware, if you have hardware that's in each 4 corners, it can get a little wonky when you're closing it and opening it, and that can wear out parts of that hardware, and you can have that hardware break. We ended up breaking one of the gas struts, but not the actual strut itself, just the actual hinge on it, and had to get a whole new set of hinges from the manufacturer, but it did leave us pretty well stranded on a trip. So there's a little more tendency for the hardware, I think, to break on this style than probably some of the other styles. One thing about these tents is they're not cheap, like the soft top, or inexpensive. They start at least at $2,000 and they go up from there. So you're gonna be spending a little bit more money, and what you're really paying for there is that hard shell. For storage, one quick thing back on the storage on these, some of them do come with actual built-in racks on top that allow you to even store stuff on top. That's pretty rare on these models, but there's a few out there that do, which is awesome if you have like bikes or kayaks that you have to get out of the vehicle and somewhere. The last thing on these ones is these tents are heavy. So think about, they're not the heaviest by any means, but you're talking at least 120 pounds. So make sure your car springs and suspension is rated to be able to handle that. The footprint on these is a little bit bigger, you know, since they don't fold out, they just kind of pop straight up. The footprint that you see is the footprint that you're sleeping in. So if you put these on the back of a short bed truck, it's probably gonna hang off the back a little bit if you're dropping it low behind the cab. Otherwise, you're putting it up high and you're having it overhang the front of the cab a little bit. So yeah, a little bit bigger footprint to work with. I think that's it for pop-ups, so we can jump over to the next one before I bore you guys to tears. Ooh, the next one's my favorite. Okay, so next category is clamshell tents. Popular manufacturers for these are going to be Area BFE, CVT Tents, Roof Nest, Go Fast Camper makes one. The pros on this is definitely the fastest style out there. It literally takes about 5 seconds for it to pop up, and it takes about 30 seconds to put away. The nature of these is they're usually, a lot of them are mostly made in the same factory in China and just branded with different brands. That's not true of all of them, but most of them. They're generally an aluminum clamshell that, you know, that opens up like this. It has a mounting rail along the side, which is pretty cool because that gives you additional storage space for mounting things like max tracks or an axe or things like that. The other thing that's kind of cool about these for pros is that hardware, all the hardware that opens, closes it, locks it, hinges, all mounts on that same track that you can mount your Mac tracks on. So what that means is if you break a piece of the hardware for this, it's super easy to just slide it off and put a new one on. So it's the easiest tent to work on if you are really tough on your equipment and you know you're gonna break stuff. These are great tents. Another thing about these that's pretty cool is the footprint. And it's same thing, has the longer footprint, so it's either going over your cab or off the back, or if you have a 4Runner SUV, it's just gonna cover the majority of your roof. But these things are thin. They are the thinnest profile tents out there right now. So they're very aerodynamic. In fact, they're kind of like the barely there tent. I've actually went on trails with people, and like a day later, they're like, "Wait, do you have a rooftop tent?" Because it's on the back of my truck, sitting low. It almost just computes to people as part of the rack, and that's, so yeah, they're so nice and thin. The other thing about these is they're very durable in the weather. This is one of those categories where they'll be #1, just like speed. They're not only like the pop-up where the fabric is stretched tight so it doesn't blow and flap around in the wind, but then with the angle and having that hard top, you can just park into the wind or into a snowstorm and it will shed the snow, it sheds the rain, and it takes care of you really well. So one of the best tents for inclement weather, for sure. One other thing that's kind of nice with these compared to the pop-ups is while on one side you have no head space, on the tall side you have plenty of head space. For the cons on this one, just like the pop-ups, they are heavy. You're usually going to see them in 130-pound plus range, so you want to make sure your car can handle that. They are expensive in that they start at like $2,000 is if you get a screaming sale on them. Usually you're gonna see them more in the $3,000 range plus. They do work for tall people, like 6'4", 6'5". When you get taller than that, they do make different sizes. So small, medium, large, you're gonna see out there a lot of times, but that only makes the tent wider. It doesn't make it longer. So what we've noticed is if you are like 6'7", you end up wanting to get a large so you can lay diagonally a little bit to have room. One other thing is with that long footprint, they're gonna hang off the back of your bed, or you're gonna have to get them over top the bed. So you gotta spend some time thinking, because that means you're gonna need a rack, and with that weight and everything, do you have the suspension to handle it? We kind of covered that. So yeah, that pretty much covers the clamshell tents. Oh, one last thing, the clamshells, part of the track on them, they do sell aftermarket, like Up Top Overland makes them, a full-blown rack, kind of similar to like the Prinsu rack, that you can put on top of it to mount like solar panels, and the gas struts on it are strong enough to be able to put like a bike on there or kayaks, no big deal. So there is lots of storage options for the top of this tent. So yeah, that's actually another thing that's pretty cool about them. Okay, so that will cover clamshells, and now let's jump over to the next style. Okay, so really quickly we're going to cover what I call kind of hybrid tents, for lack of a better name, because they're kind of category bending a little bit. So first off is iCamper. iCamper is a pretty innovative company. They're really well known for quality. They make this interesting tent that really is kind of like, it's like the soft top where it folds out, except it's a hard top. You still have the same problems of it being relatively slower to deploy and put away. It is a little bit quicker though. When you have that hard shell, it just, I'm telling you, it makes stuffing all that extra fabric in much quicker. What that does though, that gives you that ability to get that bigger tent, to get like a 2 to 4 person tent that has a hard shell. So that's gonna save you some miles per gallon. Oh, the one other niche tent that they have is they have the iCamper Mini. If you have a small truck that has a short bed, like a Tacoma or a Ranger or something like that, and you want your tent to be able to fit in the back of your bed below the cab, but you don't want it hanging off the back of your truck. In other words, you want it really compact. The iCamper Mini is really about the only thing out there that still gives you that hard shell option. I mean, the only other option other than that is the soft tops, and like I said, I think they're kind of miserable to put away. Okay, wow, well, if you're still here, I have a bonus tip for you right at the end, and it's an important one. Condensation mats are a huge deal. They're in all the different styles. Some brands have them, some brands don't. Some brands charge extra. So when you're shopping for a tent, make sure that your tent is coming with a condensation mat. Condensation mat just helps you keep your mattress from mildewing. There's a reason this isn't a music channel.